Hello, everybody, and welcome to an epic episode of Effed Up Stories. I am your host, Will Pender.
And I am your co-host, Ryan Sharp.
And tonight we're doing the big one, guys. The one that we've been talking about for like 6 months. 6 months ago, we had an eccentric donator. And part of that was that we were going to do a custom podcast for him, to honor this donation that he gave us. And the topic that he wanted us to do it on was reptilians. And when we started digging into this topic, we realized just how huge a topic this is. I mean, reptilians tie into the Illuminati, Bohemian Grove, the New World Order, aliens, abductions and crossbreeding programs, the occult, Satanism, the crossbreeding between humans and aliens, even back to biblical times, like with the Nephilim, the Anunnaki. Like, this is absolutely a huge topic. And for that reason, this is probably going to be a multi-part episode. And to add to the weight of how big of an episode this is, so you guys know that we haven't been doing a whole lot in the last 6 months, and that I told you that I've been working on something really big, and I was going to make my big reveal, and I'm doing that in this episode. So what I've been working on since Christmas, I've been working on so much that I've been averaging 4 hours of sleep a night since then. Like, I've been just crazy flat out, and this news comes in 2 parts, and they kind of go together. So part 1, right after Christmas, I found out that my wife is pregnant. We wanted a child, and we finally got what we wanted, and I'm absolutely pumped. My son-to-be, his name is Isaac, and he's due in early September. And, I can't wait to meet him, to play video games with him, to teach him guitar, to read him stories. Like, I'm absolutely pumped. But the other thing that came with that, with the news that he's coming, is that it pushed me to do something that I didn't think I could do with my current schedule. I've been hemming and hawing on the fence about doing this for 2 years. But when I got the news that Isaac was coming, I realized that this would be my last chance to do this for a very long time. And what that is I recorded a new album. And I'm dedicating it to my soon-to-be-born son, Isaac, without who I never would have finally done this. And if this video is still online and it's still going in 3 or 4 years from now, and Isaac, you come across it, know that Daddy loves you very much, and I can't wait to be best buds with you. And for the rest of you, please take the 30 seconds to see what I have been working on. So that's a small taste of my new album, Bad Wiring. And I got some free stuff for you guys. I know free is great with everybody. So just find my page on Facebook titled Will Pender Rocks. Find the post title Will Pender Bad Wiring. Like it, share it, do that, and I will send you a username and a code to download a free track, a ringtone, and wallpaper. I will also be randomly selecting people who do this for a free copy of the whole album. So like and comment it, share it, spread it like the plague, because more than anything, I just want it to get heard and enjoyed by as many people as possible. And I'm willing to give away thousands and thousands of these free downloads. So just keep the shares and the likes and the comments coming, and I will just send these out like no tomorrow. You can also stream it here on YouTube, or you can buy it on my new website, willpender.net. And possibly, if the album, the stipulation, it has to make $10,000, but if it does, someone's going to win the actual guitar used on the album. So to add to that, if you have a YouTube channel of your own, a blog, a website, a radio show, TV show, or whatever, and would be willing to feature me. I'd love to hear from you. Whether you want to do a review, interview, whatever. Even if you just like to feature some of my music on your channel, you got a game show, like a video game channel, you want to use some of my music, just get in touch with me. I'm easy to get along with, and if I can return the favor by pitching you in some of the Effed Up Stories content linked to your site or whatever, I'd definitely like to work with you. So with that said, we're going to jump into the epic topic of the evening, which is reptilians. So let's start with what reptilians are. Reptilians are, they're bipedal. They're supposed to be, similar to us humans in shape and stuff like that. But there are different schools of thought in regards to who they are and where they came from. And it gets really cloudy. And I want to say up front, before we even jump into this, there is a lot of angles on this. And I'm not saying any which way is what it is. I really don't know. I'm just going to throw at you a bunch of different angles. Ryan too.
Nor are we claiming to be authorities on the matter. So
we're definitely not. I mean, we found a lot of stuff on it. We don't know what to make of it, but it's really interesting and it's just really messed up. So, in terms of reptilians, what it is, it's a bipedal reptile in the shape of a human.
Anthropomorphic.
And the thing is, depending on which school of thought you run with, they were either here before us or they came from a different planet. And this goes right back to biblical times. Apparently reptilians are said to have given us humans a lot of our technology. Supposedly they have been involved with the building of the pyramids. They are said to have worked with the Mayans. In fact, it is believed that a lot of the religions were actually created by the reptilians.
Well, one of the popular Christian mythology stories I keep coming across, or that I have come across in the past, is the idea that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was a reptilian.
Well, exactly. Here's what it is, right? I mean, if we want to start with the beginning, the biblical references, it's that so if you look into the Bible, there is a chapter there that it speaks of basically the angels coming down and crossbreeding with humans. They looked down, they saw the human women, they were taken with them, and they came down and they crossbred with humans,
creating the Nephilim or the Nephilim.
Yeah, exactly. They create the Nephilim, and the thing with the Nephilim is that they are the giants that they speak of in the Bible. That's the crossbreeding between these angels. The Nephilim and the humans create these giants, which were up to like 12 feet tall, had 6 fingers, and I mean that's well documented in the Bible. And of course, over time, these giants, they began to just absolutely dominate the place. They had no care for anything. They took the women they wanted. They flat out became cannibalistic with men. They just did the absolute most vile things that they could. They turned away from God. So this petri dish that I often speak of, God's creation, us, absolutely ruining, I guess, what God had planned for us. And this is why apparently God created the flood, was that, the earth at this point, the DNA, because of crossbreeding, had just been absolutely
corrupted
and contaminated all across the land. And so to, I guess, destroy it and start over again, Noah and his family was apparently the only DNA left that hadn't been tainted by this alien DNA. So Noah built his ark or whatever, and God flooded the land, and then that was supposed to be to start over, to make us to be just 100% human again. And of course, that's not what happened.
So for anybody who's very interested in the giants or the Nephilim or Nephilim, however you want to say it, personally, I think one of the best stories that covers most of that, or gives you a good look at what the Nephilim could have possibly have been, in my opinion, is the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's one of the oldest stories that survived to modern day. Check it out. It's not really the topic that we're getting into today, but Epic of Gilgamesh for anybody who's interested out there. Just take a look. You won't be disappointed.
And certainly you'll find a lot of topics that kind of offspring from this one.
Oh, yes.
And as Ryan said, it was said that the reptilians were the ones that manipulated Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, talked them into sin. And of course, when they were caught, that's why, God took away their legs and, they had to crawl on his belly. But like right from the beginning of time, they were apparently manipulating us, right? So bringing it to modern times, the flood happened and we're supposed to be starting over. And of course, we are visited by aliens. There's all kinds of talk of alien abductions.
That was a great transition. The flood happened, yada, 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 2,000 years later.
2,000 years later.
Or 10,000 years later, or whatever it is.
Apparently they've always been here, right? They've helped with the pyramids and stuff like that. Actually, you know what? Just to keep back in the old times before we even go ahead, right? So, that's part of what they said for what happened with the Nephilim and stuff like that, and you relate it to the Bible. But then if you look at the theory that comes from David Icke, and his viewpoint is probably the most popular with reptilians. In fact, David Icke and reptilians is almost a synonymous.
Well, he was the guy who popularized the whole reptilian phenomenon.
For sure, right? And in his, in the way that he tells it, is that the original species here on Earth, which actually would translate to what we just said, was the Anunnaki. Right, and the Anunnaki in this case, I guess, being the, the angels or whatever, and the theory is
being what we would come to refer to as angels, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And the theory is that they can shapeshift into human form, and for any of you guys who are familiar with this, I'm sure you've done searches on YouTube, and you'll find tons and tons of videos of supposed evidence of elite people, whether in
prominent figures in media, in politics,
all places of power,
yeah.
right? Whether it's a celebrity, a movie celebrity, a singer, a political person, presidents, George W. Bush, Hillary Clinton, and you'll find all this stuff that, they say, oh, look, if you slow this down, you can see the reptilian eyes. And I just want to say up front, as somebody who's technical savvy and has some understanding of this, I'm not saying none of it's real, but 99% of what you see is literally errors.
Compression errors, yeah.
Not even just compression errors. Part of it is that, on a networking level, the protocol that they use generally for sending information is called TCP, and there's a handshake involved. Packets of data is sent, and then there's a handshake that verifies that the data is correct, and then it moves on. But with video, if you did TCP with video, it would be constantly freezing and pausing and stuff, and of course nobody wants that. So with video, they use what's called UDP, and with UDP, if there's errors or errors, you can't freeze and stop the video, and errors are literally colors and pixels don't translate correctly, and sometimes that makes it look like it's people who wouldn't know would think, oh my God, that looks like a monster there in that half a second or whatever. And that a lot of times,
if you sit there and you click through frame by frame, sometimes you see an image morph as ones that were supposed to be zeros and zeros that were supposed to be ones, have their little mistakes. And
exactly.
you'll see an image change and unfold. It's especially with live footage, is a very dynamic process, and not all the videos of supposed reptilians are just that. They're more often than not, it's going to be, and that's part of this. As part of this whole process is educating yourself and learning. If you're trying to tease out reality, you're trying to tease the truth out of the real world that we live in. And I mean, let's face it, we all know that the real world that we live in is far more fucked up than what, the average Joe thinks it is. But it's easy to go overboard sometimes. And sometimes just a little bit of self-education on the matter can illuminate things.
It can put
greatly.
you on the right path, right? If you really want to look for the truth, then that means knowing as much as you can about it and going that way. So that being said, I'm not saying that all cases are, a result of, video feed error or compression. Certainly there are those videos out there and stuff that do look legitimate. In fact, one case that is said to be the real deal is a video showing he used to be a politician, Richard H. Baker. And I've seen some screens and stuff of that. I mean, I haven't dug too deep, but it certainly doesn't look like any normal error that you would see as a result of like streaming or whatever, right? So that would be a place to start. But in any case, when it comes to going back to David Icke and his viewpoint, and because it's so popular, and I mean, some of it does sound like really out there. I mean, that's the thing with this stuff, is you kind of got to keep an open mind and just see where it takes you, right? But like,
now, before we go a little bit further, now you and I haven't really chatted a whole lot about this. One of the most prominent things with the whole video evidence of reptilians, shape-shifting reptilians in the guise of humans, is the slitted eyes. And for years, I have been going back and forth my own internal battle over what, is this just a video compression phenomenon, or because it's so widespread
and it's subtle, right?
It's very subtle, but there are so many photographs, or well, not even just photographs, but still images of video that seem very clearly show slitted pupils in just a plethora of different public figures, whether they be media, celebrities, or politicians. And I was just wondering, what's your take on the slitted pupil? Because the whole, when the sides of the face and the contours of the face, sometimes the pixels shift around and change.
But that's a specific thing.
That's the errors that we're talking about. But with the pupils, that's the thing that's always really stuck with me with this. What's your take on that?
Well, my thought on this, and this is something that I've been looking more and more into, is that okay, so there's this theory, right, that how I said that the reptilians have like alien grays coming down, and like the grays being an arm, we'll say, of the reptilians. Okay.
Yeah, they're they're
like a lower ranking.
In the lore, they're the subservient drones that
exactly
kind of carry out the whims of the reptilians.
Right. There's a hierarchy.
I was just going to say that there's, even amongst the reptilians, there appears to be a hierarchy where there's a worker class, a warrior class, and a leader class, and an upper royal class. Exactly.
And the grays are right on the bottom, right?
They're below the lowest reptilian worker class.
Yeah, and so like what they're mainly known for is like the abduction and crossbreeding program that the reptilians have going. And the reason why, like if anybody's wondering why this is even a thing, right, is that with the crossbreeding, that is said to be how they infiltrate into human society. Because, they come down, they abduct us, they apparently impregnate women in particular.
Well, it'd be pretty hard to impregnate a man.
Unless it was Arnold. He wasn't in that movie, right? But, they come down, they abduct these women, and apparently they impregnate them, they bring them back down to Earth, and a lot of times the women don't even know this happened, right? And it could be like...
No, because they let the fetus grow only until it's, just past a blastocyst or whatever, and then they go back in and extract it.
That's exactly what they do. And the woman will often have like this really bizarre miscarriage that is unexplainable to medical doctors. Like they can't explain how this happened. It's traumatic for them. And other times they'll let the whole thing go through, and the father, the husband, will believe that it's their child, never knowing that this is an alien hybrid, actually. And sometimes
now, I'll just stop you there, because that is such an interesting point for me, because it really throws me back to an episode we did. Jesus, it must have been a year or 2 years ago, maybe more. But the idea of, that's the same shit that fairies would pull.
Oh yeah, well,
right?
The
more
more
I think, baby exchange program that they had going.
The more I think about this stuff, a lot of like different names that we have for things and stuff like that, I think might actually be related to the same thing, as just a different group of people or a different culture. That's what
I mean, right? Like back then the phenomenon was attempting to be understood by the people through the lens of their cultural experience, right? There was no airplanes and moon landings or submarines or anything back then, so it was a fairy. But now we're interpreting the same scenarios through the lens of a 21st century experience.
Right. And to get back to, you asked me why I think, we have this thing with the eyes, like what do I make of it? And what that is that there literally is, if we are going to take these things at face value, there are literally bloodlines and alien DNA mixed in with humans. And some of these people, they might not even know it. You and I, the people listening, we could have a percentage of this alien DNA in us right now. And depending, I guess, on the level of contamination, you might actually have physical traits of, like you said, like with the eyes and stuff like that. Now, if you're usually the people we see, like we mentioned, are these high political figures or celebrities or whatever, and they're the ones that are caught that we see on camera, because like normal people aren't, right? And they're usually higher up in the hierarchy, right? And for those guys, they're apparently like they can shapeshift into the shape of a human, but their normal form is lizard-like. And the way it was explained to me is that they, way back when, these aliens had purposely had crossbreeding with a certain reptilian creature in the Mayan times, so that they could gain, through crossbreeding, they could gain this ability to shapeshift, because they never had that originally. And, so they can do it, but apparently they can only hold it for so long. Like, they can only hold that human image for so long. And what they say is that, like, when you see these people on TV, if you start seeing them and they suddenly start blinking a lot, and in between those blinks, sometimes you'll see the eye change, or sometimes you'll see like...
Now I gotta ask you, have you seen the recent video of Hillary Clinton having a what appears to be a petite mal seizure.
Is that the one where she like looks up in the air and is like blasted all over social media, like she's looking around really weird, like almost like she's high?
It's not that one. This one, she's outside, surrounded by a group of camera crews and reporters, and one of them leans in to ask her a question, and it like triggers her. She leans back and she starts blinking and bobbing her head uncontrollably.
No,
and,
I didn't see that one.
it goes on for some time. It's actually, it's one of those things where it makes you a little uncomfortable to watch, because you're thinking, oh shit, like, I guess if you start to empathize with the person, if I was doing that, I'd feel like a fucking douchebag, but since it's evil Hillary Clinton, you don't feel that bad. But of course, there's a whole slew of people saying, "Well, here we go, reptilian trying to hold on to the polymorph, trying to hold on to the human form." Now, here's another point of contention I want to shoot across your bow, because again, you and I really haven't talked a whole lot about this, about what our views and thoughts are, because it's, in my opinion, is better if it comes out during the podcast. But now, do you feel or think or believe that the human image on top of the reptilian, do you believe that that's a physical change that the reptilian goes through, or do you think it is aided by technology such as advanced holographics?
Well, I'm actually going to lean towards the latter, simply because I've read stories of eyewitness accounts that said in almost all cases where somebody had morphed like that, they have these very strange belts that they wear, and they believe that the technology.
I've seen that too. Now, myself, I haven't seen too many examples of it, but I have read that exact same thing, and isn't that peculiar?
Well, I mean, they say that a lot of our technology. Think about it. Let's just take a quick trip back to the beginning here, where we were like primates, and that's what they say. We were like basically orangutans or monkeys, and if we're going to look at Zachariah Sitchin's look at, like, he transcribed these
the Sumerian text.
The Sumerian text, and of course Sumeria was like the first known civilization on Earth, and when he transcribed it, the whole thing was that instead of talking about Nephilim, they called them the Anunnaki, and they basically came here because we apparently had gold, and they needed gold for whatever reason,
to repair their atmosphere.
Okay, well, for that reason, and they wanted us to do the work, to enslave us, to do the mining, the digging. To go together. So part one, right after Christmas, I found out that my wife is pregnant. We wanted a child, and we finally got what we wanted, and I'm absolutely pumped. My son-to-be, his name is Isaac, and he's due in early September. And, I can't wait to meet him, to play video games with him, to teach him guitar, to read him stories. Like, I'm absolutely pumped. But the other thing that came with that, with the news that he's coming, is that it pushed me to do something that I didn't think I could do with my current schedule. I've been hemming and hawing on the fence about doing this for 2 years. But one that we've been talking about for like 6 months. 6 months ago, we had an eccentric donator. And part of that was that we were going to do a custom podcast for him, to honor this donation that he gave us. And the topic that he wanted us to do it on was reptilians. And when we started digging into this topic, we realized just how huge a topic this is. I mean, reptilians tie into the Illuminati, Bohemian Grove, the New World Order, aliens, abductions and crossbreeding programs, the occult, Satanism, the crossbreeding between humans and aliens, even back to biblical times. When I got the news that Isaac was coming, I realized that this would be my last chance to do this for a very long time. And what that is I recorded a new album. And I'm dedicating it to my soon-to-be-born son, Isaac, without who I never would have, finally done this. And if this video is still online and still going in 3 or 4 years from now, and Isaac, you come across it, know that Daddy loves you very much, and I can't wait to be best buds with you. And for the rest of you, please take the 30 seconds to see what I have been working on. Hello, everybody, and welcome to an epic episode of Effed Up Stories. I am your host, Will Pender.
And I am your co-host, Ryan Sharp.
And tonight we're doing the big one, guys. The one, with the Nephilim, the Anunnaki. This is absolutely a huge topic. And for that reason, this is probably going to be a multi-part episode. And to add to the weight of how big of an episode this is. So you guys know that we haven't been doing a whole lot in the last 6 months, and that I told you that I've been working on something really big, and I was going to make my big reveal, and I'm doing that in this episode. So what I've been working on since Christmas, I've been working on so much that I've been averaging 4 hours of sleep a night since then. I've been just crazy flat out. And this news comes in two parts. And they kind